Good morning, and good morning. How are you? Today is Friday. The week is gone. What'd you get done? What'd you do? I did a lot. A lot of meetings, a lot of note taking. Uh, retouch with friends. Did a lot, and I can say that I'm welcoming this Friday. After this session, I'm going to take off and do Sandy. Maybe rest a little bit, prepare some stuff for next week. Um, but I realized that in the course of a given week or or say a month or a year, there's a lot of things that we failed at. That's today's word, failed. How many of us have failed at some things that we just encounter? It is truly in life that we will go through periods where we do everything and everything falls the way it's supposed to, and then other times, not so much. Not so much. So, today, in talking about failure, um, I can say that I didn't stay on my failures. I didn't stay there. A lot of times, we may be faced with something that we would consider a failure because we didn't complete it, we didn't work on it, we didn't make it a priority, we didn't make it number one. There's a lot of things that get in our way in the course of time. It just gets in our way. So what do we do? What do we do? And so that's my question today. What do you do after a failure? Do you stay there? It comes in, it stings us, it makes us where it just really gets into what I would say the core of all that we don't want to happen happens, and we become deflated to the point where we just can't get right back up. But yet and still, we can't stay there. Life goes on, and it will always go on, regardless of what we think. So when we talk about failure this morning, I found a poem. I'm always finding. I go on the internet and I look for poems. This one is by Lawrence Musgrove. It's Musgrove. And he speaks of and his name is spelled different. It's Laurence. Because sometimes Lawrence is spelled Law, but I don't know his nationality, so therefore, that's the first time that I'm saying it spelled that way. But anyway, it talks about failure, and it says failure. It's actually not true that every day is a chance to start all over again. We wake up in the same self we were yesterday and all the days before. We've still got the same heart in constant repair and mind going cold. What's actually true about this day is not the fresh beginning, but the chance to grab yourself by the shoulders and shake yourself awake, saying, let's not make the same mistakes we usually do. Let's learn from some new ones. I like that. Let's learn from some new ones. How many of us make mistakes and we stay in the mistake? We just stay there and say, man, I can't ever get over this. I don't know how to maneuver this problem that occurred. How do I do it? Good morning, Big Mo. How are you? Welcome this morning. I know I have a couple of friends that come usually, and I know they're out on vacation, but I'm glad to see you. And Ardelia, good morning to you. First of all, recognize that failure is an event, not a person. Come on now. Come on, preach. It's not. It's not. It's not who we are. It's what happens to us. Sometimes we are just in a position that isn't as, I would say, as sturdy, as consistent, as supportive, as functional as it should be. But when we get around it, we can look back at it and say, wow, I made it through. I made it to the other side. I made it to the side where now I know that I can't change what happened to me yesterday, but I can start anew today. And like Lawrence Musgrove is saying, it doesn't matter what you did yesterday. You can make new mistakes today and learn from those new mistakes. So therefore, we did learn something because we're not doing the same mistake we made yesterday. So that's really good. I love it. So let's get into the word of failed. And I love it. I love it that I like drilling down in the words because it really it forces us to really get in touch with our own ideas on everything. And it also expands our way of understanding ourselves and others, because sometimes you have to give others a break too. Hey, good morning, Lisa. How are you? Good to see you in the space. Hey, girl. Hey, Sandy. Good. Love you too. Yes, indeed. Yeah, good morning, Maurice. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Glad to have you here as well. And it says failed. It says falling short of success. Good morning, Joan. How are you? Good morning, good morning. Our word is failed. And fail says falling short of success or achievement in something expected or desired. I mean, how many of us have desires and expectations for ourselves? You know, we want love, we want happiness, we want the same for our children. We want things. We want things. And to me, that's part of living, is that we do desire things. But it says in the event that we don't get them, does it crush us? Does it crumble us? Sometimes to a certain extent. And then we have to move on, you know, because we can't stay in the mistake we made. We just can't stay there. So anyway, it says that when something has failed, that meant it showed up to us as being fruitless. It says futile, unsuccessful, failing, ineffective. It says also miscarrying. Fix it. Oh, come on now. Fix. Yes, 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 yes. It says miscarrying, unveiling, and being ineffectual. So a lot of times we don't like to put our name or our associative being next to things that indicate failure. We don't. But sometimes when we admit that we failed at something, then we can go on to be more successful at something else, only because that wasn't for us or we approached it wrong. But identifying the fact that, okay, so we failed, big deal. You know, when I was in marriage and family counselor, one of the things I would tell people is that, okay, so this didn't work. And you move on. You move on. You go on to where you can be happy as well as they can be happy. That's how it's done. But you don't keep trying to fix, thank you, Joan, fix something that has already basically closed down, become dead, it ceased to exist, aborted, it's gone. Fortify, come on now, forgive. How many of us can forgive ourselves? See, I'm working with y'all this morning. How many of us can forgive ourselves for what we've done? You know, sometimes we hold ourselves accountable far too long. And sometimes we hold other people accountable far too long because they have moved on. That's good for myself. That's good for myself this morning. I'm going to speak it into existence. I was speaking it into existence. It says, so when we move on with the word, we talk about my F. You already have started this as I have fruitless. When you think about the fact that you've created something and you wanted it to grow, become big, become acknowledged, recognized, accepted, appreciated, all those kinds of things, and then it flops right down to the ground, meaning nothing happened with it. Nobody said anything about it. Nobody recognized it as being good, being worthy. Sometimes that's part of it, saying we have to admit to ourselves that it was fruitless, meaning it failed to achieve the desired results that we wanted. Even though we introduced it, it was unproductive. Even though we thought it was great, other people found it to be useless. And sometimes when we hear those things, it's talk about useless, unproductive, all those things, we associate it with ourselves, but not with what we did or how we approached it. Sometimes we just have to say, yep, that wasn't no good. I approached it wrong, didn't really like it, or I didn't like the result because you all are showing me that it didn't do what I expected it to do. Because how many of us start projects and we have expectations? All of us do. Everybody. The person that starts a business and the business fails, um, should they hold themselves accountable forever? No, no. Get somebody else that can help you with the preparation for a new business plan, and a business plan that has, really done its marketable search. What's out there? Who am I competing with? What makes us better than someone else's? How can I get the advertisement out to the population? That's how it has to be looked at, differently than maybe what you looked at it before. So when something is fruitless, it says it may be in vain, to no avail, it may be idle, because a lot of times we let things sit too long. By the time we go back to get them, guess what? They've lost their value. That could be even with something as simple as an idea that you had 5 years ago and you never worked on it. So by the time 5 years later, other people have come in with a similar idea. So how do you deal with it? How do you deal with the fact that the landscape changed? More people moved in on it. Okay. So now you have a colony around something that originally was just, you know, one little piece of property in a larger area to work in. We just realize that sometimes we sit too long on ideas, that by the time they mature to our level of production, they've already matured in other people's, financial success, making it up the ladder for recognition, all those kinds of things. So sometimes time becomes our issue, our problem, and it makes it where things are fruitless. So fruitless also talks about it being hollow, meaning it was good on the outside, but inside something was missing. Inside something was missing. It talks about it that when we decided to our unveiling, there was no one there to applaud any success because it wasn't successful. It says in last, it says it could be hopeless, because we just wait too long. My A of failed this morning is for abort. And I have two words today that are similar, but I wanted to make the point that sometimes we have to turn back. We have to go in the other direction or another direction. Okay. Just because adjustment, that's great. Sometimes we do have to make adjustments. We do. We must make adjustments. So anyway, I used abort, and I said abort is developed, where we developed whatever we were doing, and it shown itself up as being incomplete. It remained in a rudimentary or undeveloped state. It's the same thing when you look at things that had to be given up because they weren't working right. We started wrong. Maybe we didn't start with enough money or with enough people to work, or the idea was too limited. We sometimes have to realize that if we haven't done all of our homework, we have to admit to that. We didn't do all the things that we could have done or should have done. Arrange is good. That's good, because I believe that if you're going to do something, it has to be arranged well, has to be organized well, has to be built well, and then it has to be processed well. It has a what I would say a hierarchical process to it. In order to go up, you have to keep pushing forward on what else needs to be in what is visible, what becomes visible to people. So to board, it says to break off, to decide that you needed to go, to interrupt what's going on, to nullify the fact. Sometimes other people will nullify it by not paying attention to it, but we may need to nullify it before we even give it to them as an option to look at. And we have to scrap it or scrub it. Either way, all of that says that basically laissez-faire, we're done with it. Moving on in our word this morning, I have my I. And for the I put that it was incomplete. Sometimes we have failed because we have not completed all that would make it work for those we have an interest in trying to look at what it is that we've done. illustrate. That's a good word too. Great word. To illustrate. Insufficient. Ooh, y'all are on it this morning. We don't like to talk about our inefficiency, but if we are inefficient, then what we produce may also be short of what is needed to make it be accepted, appreciated, you know, visited, especially if it's a place of business, or it's something to the nature where you're looking at other people to do something with it. You have to make sure that you do it right, so that once they come, they'll come again. They'll come again. So I said incomplete, idle. Ooh, I like that. When something is idle. Incomplete is not having all the necessary or appropriate parts. I know I've worked with several people who say, I want you to help me with this doc, and I say, okay. And then I get to starting to work with them and find out, well, what have you done? And they they have little or nothing. They have little or nothing. And so how do you tell them? Well, I got to be honest, I just tell them, what you want me to help. No, I'm not going to do it. I need to know what it is that you're trying to do, and I need to see that you've worked on it. But if you haven't worked on it, you can't expect me to tell you what needs to be done. I first have to have all, what's your outline, what's your ideas, what's the projection, who else did you consult, what else is out there, that matches up, or may give you trouble because they've done a better job at the research. Because I believe all projects need to be researched. If you're going to do a project, research it out. Who else is out there doing it? So when we have something that's incomplete, it says it's deficient, okay, insufficient, which is what Maurice put, imperfect, defective, partial. How many people have you ever worked with and they say, well, I did so and so and so and so, and you look and there's nothing there, or very little. That's partial. Patchy, sketchy, fragmented. Good morning, Tommy Gunn. How are you doing, my friend? Good to see you in the space. And and if y'all haven't been to Tommy's place on 9th Avenue, 1216. I think it's 1216. It's a fun place. I've been there a couple of times. But anyway, when things are patchy or incomplete, they're scrappy, itty bitty, you can really break it down, lacking something. You go there and you don't feel fulfilled, or you've seen what they're presenting and you say, and they have something else. How many of you have ever been to a presentation and say, that's it? You want to give everything out there so that people fully understand what it is that you are bringing in. It says abridged, shortened, qualified, unqualified, and restrictive. So, to me, when I'm looking at failure or what I failed at, I go back and I actually check off what I missed. And failure is a part of life. So, to fail at something doesn't mean you're no good. Absolutely does not mean that. It means that you didn't do a job that attracted what you wanted to happen with that it was received by many, it was well loved or liked, and it could be utilized in the future for others, by others. That's what you want, but it doesn't mean anything about who you are, which is what Ardelia said earlier. So we look at it when something is incomplete, it's fragmented, it could be scrappy, all those kinds of things. But when we move on in the word, though, of failed, my L is very interesting. Let me see what you put for your L, because let me see what you put for your L. Anybody want to take a chance with me this morning and tell me, what would you use for your L? Now, for me, I'll give you all a second. For me, I have one that is funny because it's utilized as a kind of a playful, toyish kind of word, but it means the same thing. Liable. Ooh, liable is good. because we do have to be liable. Sometimes we produce things even though they're not complete, and we end up being responsible or liable for what happens to it. And sometimes it may be we've crossed some encountered some legal issues or some personnel issues or some personal issues. So, that's true. Liability is a factor. Well, I wrote down lay an egg. How many of us have just absolutely laid an egg? We just realized that we weren't good at it, but we were going to try it. We're going to put it out there. And we didn't do all we could do to make it the best, but it was our best at the time. So it says lay an egg is to make a mistake. We made a mistake. We didn't do all we were supposed to do. We didn't encounter all we were supposed to encounter. We didn't uncover all we were supposed to uncover. So it is. So it says we end up there being a blunder, a flub, an error, a foul up, a slip up, a screw up, a stumble, a stumble. Because usually when somebody stumbles, I was going into Walmart 2 weeks ago, and I don't know, I was looking at my phone, and I never walk and try to look at a phone. But someone called me, and I was trying, and it was in the sun, and I tripped. I tripped over like they had a little, I guess like a lip in the street, and I tripped over it. But great God and goodness for God, because I did not fall. I did not fall. I said, okay, let's put some of that exercise in. And I fell forward, but I didn't fall. So, sometimes you have to realize when you lay an egg, you lay an egg. Plain and simple. And I felt kind of stupid because I did trip, but I didn't fall all the way down. I got right back up and just kept going, walking in the store like nothing happened. Some lady asked me, "Hey, you okay?" I'm fine. Thank you so much. What else was I going to do? And if I had fallen, I said, "Hey, can you help me up if I need it?" That's where you go. My E, when I move on and failed, says that I have to decide when something should end. E for me is end. Now, it could be encounter, it could be enrichment, it could be I need encouragement, all those kinds of things, all the other E's that they're exceptional. Okay. Making something exceptional, like this, figuring out what else needs to go in it or out of it. So I said end. It's the final part of something. It's especially a period of time, an activity, or a story. So when you've run out of time or you've run out of dealing with certain things, okay, just say it's done with it. Move on. Move on. It says it's when something has been drawn to a conclusion. It's when termination hits. Ending, happens. Something is finished, Even when I think about some of the epic things that have happened, not just in my life, but in other people's lives. And we want it to end if it's not good. You don't want to keep putting money, time, effort, love, care, basically you into things that aren't working. When it's not working, we need to say, this is not working. It's not good for me. It's not good for me. It's costing too much money. It's requiring too much time. I'm exhausted. There's a word, exhausted. Okay. So ending also says that there's come a resolution to it. It climaxed. There was a finale, a culmination, a denouncement. Sometimes we have to denounce our own stuff. I remember in Coming to America, the first one, not Coming to America, the second one, but Coming to America, the first one, when the prince had to, basically give up his country. He says, and I denounce my country. How many of us are willing to denounce when we've gone as far as we can with something? We failed at it. Some of us take on the worldliness of friends, family saying, and it failed. But maybe the next one won't. So how do I need to go back and address it again or deal with something else? Labeled. Ooh, that's good. Labeled is good. That's very good. Very, very good. So anyway, when something ends, it also says there's an epilogue. And an epilogue basically means that you've also looked at what did I do wrong? What was it's almost like when someone dies, there's always, a eulogy. Sometimes you have to go back and eulogize what happened. What happened? What I do wrong? What didn't I do? You know, did I put too much time in it? But I was running around in circles. Too much money and not enough thought. So you have to say, I don't want my money to go just like I don't need to go. So I don't want to have to run after my money, especially if it's going to cost a lot and it's fruitless. Okay. And we need to put an end to it. So the end also says it's a coda and it says it's a wind up, meaning we own up to the fact that we're going to close it down. We're going to close the doors. We're going to, stop working on this particular issue. We're going to move on to something else. So my last word, yay, for today in failed is determined. Determined. I feel that if you're determined, you can get back up, you can find out what will work and work on it. But work on it in such a way that it diverges good. Yes, diverge. How many of us have realized that occasionally we do need to diverge? But in this instance, I use determined. So I'm saying that my determination says that I need to move on. Having reached a decision sometimes it is very heartfelt. It's troubling. It's one that says failure or failed with the ed, but it's our truth. Why would we want to lay around in something or stay in something that isn't working? We want it to work. So it says, having reached a decision, firmly resolved, was determined to become a pilot, is determined not to let it happen again. So you can just say, you know what, that was my tryout. That was my tryout. Didn't work. And sometimes we have to try out over and over again. I was talking to somebody and they were saying that their son interviewed for a job in Atlanta, and the interviewing process was for 2 months, and they called them back 2 or 3 times for an interview. So they interviewed the interviewee 3 times. Okay. So they're looking for certain things. They look for consistency. They look for developmental processing. They're looking for ideas. They're looking for how confident. They're looking for things. And that's the same thing when we're doing our own projects. We should be looking for things that other people would be looking to see that we've done, that we've crossed off our list. Demonstrate. Come on now. There it is. Demonstration is crucial. You have to be able to demonstrate what it is that you're doing and that people can understand it. So it says determined. Determined also talks about showing determination is the what effort did you put in? Effort in, results out. So you put no effort in, then the results would show it. If you put a lot of effort in, but you've also put in resources, practicality, consulting, all those kinds of things, it may have more success, attached to it. But it says also being determined is persevering. Sometimes we have to persevere, and that means that we have to basically make a decision that we would go back to what it is that we're doing. We would end it. We would admit that we laid an egg. We would admit that it was incomplete because we didn't do all that we needed to do. We would admit that we needed to abort it because it had not developed properly. And we admit that it was fruitless, meaning there's nothing else that we can do with it. It is fruitless. So it determined also says that we settled with ourselves, and we made in that settlement the decisiveness of just saying, this is it. And dogged, purposeful, resolute, meaning that is what we came up with for ourselves. It says that we realize that we made a serious decision, and single-minded. And single-minded means that you made a decision, other people didn't make a decision for you. And I look at some of what's going on in the world now, and I said, well, wonder who made that decision, even though it affects, millions of people. Who made the actual decision to make it where it became so publicized that everyone knew it? Question. So then you talk about steadfast, strong-willed, and sometimes when we're really looking at being determined, are we stubborn? Sometimes we need to be stubborn. We need to be the one that makes the decisions that makes it work, that make it work. But anyway, that's our word for today. I'm hoping that you all will look at your failures as being a planning ground for you to come right on back out and move on to something else and say, that was a pilot. That was my test run. Okay. Now I'm going to approach it differently, because you learn from those. And then it says you go forward and you learn from your new mistakes, as Mr. I forgot his name. Mr. Lawrence Musgrove says in his poem Failure. Look that poem up. It really, really is a good poem. I mean, it really speaks to the fact that it is what it is. It is what it is. If we learn from what our mistakes have been and decide to give up on that and move on to make the new mistakes, not stay in the old ones. Just learn a little bit from them and then go on to learn from the new ones. But anyway, failed. That's what we do sometimes. We have failed. Admit you're failed and move on. All right. Listen, if you don't do anything else, hit that button that says share and let this message be shared to others. And they can go to find all of my videos are on my YouTube channel. They can also look at Instagram. I'm trying to get it out there. All right. I love you guys. Take care of yourselves. I appreciate you. I'll be back on Monday to give you another, are you stuck? It is a question, and we get stuck. All right. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Be safe. Ciao, bye.